Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Bible in 1 year with the preacher's husband. Today we are talking about Exodus chapters 16, 17, and 18. Now, where we left off, the Israelites were already moaning and groaning to Moses about the water. They got that situation taken care of. But now, the Israelite community had left from Elim and came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had left the land of Egypt. The entire Israelite community at this point were grumbling about being hungry. They wanted some food and they were starving. Well, they started getting mad at Moses, saying, "You brought us out of here. At least in Egypt we had full bellies, we ate all the bread we wanted, and we had water, and we were taken care of there, even though we were slaves and having to do Pharaoh's bidding. At least we got fed and watered there. What are you going to do about this?" So Moses prays to God. God tells Moses what to do, and guess what happens? Moses does, and the Lord rains down manna from heaven. Now, manna is like bread, but not really. It's kind of like little flakes. It's like teeny flakes of a bread-like substance. There's nothing in the world that you can really explain it, but this is somewhat of what it might look like. It might have looked somewhat like this, kind of like snow or a frost on the ground. Now, what God told Moses and told the Israelites that what they would do when he rained down this manna, that they were to each pick up enough for the day. And on the sixth day, they needed to gather enough of it for 2 days' worth for themselves. Now, how much was that? There are actually a listing here that says it was a Omer. An Omer was roughly a half a gallon in today's age. Now, you can Google this and look it up, but each time I've looked it up, I've come up with a different amount. Some say it's roughly a half a gallon. Some say it's like anywhere from 2.2 to 3.5 liters, anywhere in that range of dry volume, dry grain volume, not weight, but dry grain volume. So that is an Omer. So that's how much. That's almost a half a gallon per day. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff for one person. But there was a reason why they told them to gather twice as much on the sixth day. And that was because the seventh day was going to become the Sabbath. He asked them to rest on the seventh day, and he was testing the people to see if they were going to follow his rules. And for the most part they did, but some didn't. Some tried to gather a little bit extra, so they would have a little bit of extra, and some people didn't eat all theirs. Well, next day when they woke up, they found what they had left over had maggots and worms in it, and it had rotted. It was no good, so it wouldn't last more than a day. So they had to rely on God. And they did so. They did so for 40 years. They ate of this manna. Now, from where they were traveling, remember we talked about where they were. They had left the Goshen area, of course, and went down to Succoth, then Etham, and then back up towards the Reed Sea is where we've established that we think is where the crossing of the Red Sea, which was actually the Reed Sea then. I assume when they crossed that, they ended up on the east side of it, and then they turned south and went down the east side of the Bitter Lakes. Now, many maps show them going down the west side of the Bitter Lakes, but they went down to Marah, is where we found them, where they had just left from. And Marah on this map looks a little bit further south than I was assuming it was, but then when they left from Marah, they went to somewhere in between Elim, which is further down to the east of that little gulf there of the Red Sea. And then from here on, they're going to travel down to Rephidim, which is next to where Mount Sinai was. And my thing is, why would they have named this the Sinai Peninsula if Mount Sinai was not there? Today, there is a place called Mount Sinai over in the Midian area on this map that they claim is Mount Sinai, but there's no way that could have been based on biblical interpretation of Mount Sinai. So there's your maps for the day. And that brings us to chapter 17. Chapter 17, guess what? Water issues again. Now that they were down there in the desert, just past Elim, they're actually at Rephidim now. They were out of water. And they said, now what are we going to do, Moses? So Moses asked God, and God said, Moses, take your stick, bang it on a rock, and water's going to come pouring out. So what happened? Moses banged his stick on a rock, and water came pouring out. There it is. There's all that water getting all poured out. And like I said before, here we are, down here at Rephidim, if you look right in the middle, down there, just north of Jebel Musa, which is where they believe Mount Sinai was located. Now, in chapter 17, right after they found their water, they get attacked. They get attacked by Amalek, which came and fought against Israel. Amalek attacked them. They repelled them back, and then Moses told Joshua, get some men together and go fight against them. Tomorrow I'm going to go stand on a hilltop with God's staff in my hand, and you'll fight them. So Joshua does that, grabs his men, they go and they fight these guys. And while Moses is up there, he's raising his hands up, holding his staff, and they're winning. But as soon as he drops his hands down, he realized that Amalek starts to win. So he raised his hand back up, and then the Israelites start to win again. He's like, oh my. So he had to stand there with his hands up this whole time for the Israelites to win. But he started getting tired. But then when Aaron and Hur realized what was going on, they started propping his arms up, holding him up, and then propping rocks up under his arms so he could have his arms held up the whole time. And eventually he did prevail. So right after that happened and they won, Moses' father-in-law, the priest of Midian, heard about everything that was going on, and they traveled and they met up. Now, at this point, there's Jethro from that famous movie scene there, and Moses. Jethro had taken in Moses' wife for a time and his two kids. They had traveled up there to be with their father for a bit of this time. When the father came back, he notices that Moses was spending almost all day long acting as judge for the Israelites. Everyone was bringing their problems to Moses, and Moses was having to take care of all of these problems that the Israelites were having. So Jethro said, well, why don't you just assign some people to take care of these issues? Assign some people that you know that are really smart and good, but it's important who you select. He says this in chapter 18, verse 21, you should select from all the people able men, God-fearing, trustworthy, and hating dishonest profit. Place them over the people as commanders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They should judge the people at all times. And then the ones that they couldn't take care of, the really major cases, bring those to Moses. So basically, this is a lesson in delegating. This is a lesson in delegating and not becoming overwhelmed yourself. It's also a lesson in how to select a good leader. How to select a good leader for any group, any organization, even in the United States today. And I was reminded of Noah Webster. Noah Webster was known as the father of American scholarship and education, and he was the author of the famous Webster's Dictionary. Now, he actually quoted this scripture that I just quoted to you, Exodus 18, verse 21, in a speech that he gave. And he was talking about selecting people for public office. Noah Webster said this, in selecting men for office, let principle be your guide. Regard not the particular sect or the party of the candidate. Look at his character. It is alleged by men of loose principles or defective views of the subject that religion and morality are not necessary or important qualifications for political stations. But the scriptures teach a different doctrine. They direct that rulers should be men who rule in the fear of God, able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness. He was basically quoting the King James Version of that scripture, and that is why Noah Webster to me is another American hero. because he had the good idea of how to select your leadership. I hope this has touched you. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the Bible in 1 year with Exodus chapters 19, 20, and 21. And I hope to see you again tomorrow. If this has touched you, please share it. Click the like button, the subscribe button, and of course, click the little jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow. See you then.